Get out of my car. Margaret screamed, pushing my 5-year-old Emma into the burning desert. Your mother doesn't want you anymore. Emma was alone, no water, 110-degree heat, deadly snakes everywhere. 3 minutes later, military helicopters filled the sky. Margaret had made a fatal mistake. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Get out of my car. Margaret screamed at my 5-year-old daughter Emma. Your mother doesn't want you anymore. I watched in horror through my binoculars as the HOA president pushed my terrified child out of her SUV and into the burning Arizona desert. Emma fell to her knees in the sand, crying as Margaret drove away without looking back. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a soldier, and this is how one evil woman almost killed my daughter and learned what happens when you mess with a military family. It started when Margaret Thornfield came to my door 3 hours earlier. She was the HOA president, a rich woman in her 60s who hated everyone, especially military families like mine. Margaret lived in the biggest house on our street, with perfect gardens that looked like they belonged in magazines and 3 expensive cars parked in her circular driveway. She thought she was better than everyone else and treated the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. Your daughter is breaking community rules, Margaret said coldly, holding a thick folder of complaints that she had been collecting like evidence in a court case. She's too loud when she plays outside. She rides her bike in areas that aren't designated for children. She draws with chalk on your sidewalk, which violates our aesthetic standards. This behavior ends today. I looked at her in complete shock, unable to believe what I was hearing. She's 5 years old. She's just playing like any normal child. I don't care how old she is, Margaret snapped, her face twisted with unreasonable anger. Rules are rules in this community. That child is disturbing the peace of our neighborhood, and I won't tolerate it anymore. Through our back window, I could see Emma playing in our yard, laughing and singing songs about butterflies and rainbows while she built a small fort out of cardboard boxes. She was the sweetest little girl you could imagine, with blonde hair that caught the sunlight and blue eyes that sparkled when she smiled. Her daddy was deployed overseas with his Special Forces unit, and she missed him every single day. Every night, she would kiss his photograph goodnight and tell him about her daily adventures, as if he could hear her across the ocean. She's just a child playing in her own yard, I told Margaret, trying my best to stay calm despite my growing anger. We're not breaking any reasonable rules. I don't care about what you think is reasonable, Margaret sneered, her voice dripping with hatred that seemed to come from somewhere deep and dark inside her. Military brats don't get special treatment in my neighborhood. Either control that child properly or I'll find a way to make her stop myself. The threat in her voice made my blood run cold, but I thought she was just being overly dramatic like most HOA presidents. I had no idea how truly evil she was or what she was planning. Margaret had been causing problems for our family since we moved into Desert Ridge Estates 2 weeks ago. This was supposed to be our fresh start while Jake was deployed. The community seemed perfect for a military family, safe streets, good schools, and close to my new assignment at the nearby military base. But from the moment our moving truck arrived, Margaret had found fault with everything we did. She complained about our moving truck being parked in the street for more than 4 hours. She issued a violation notice because our American flag was too large for the approved flag size specifications. She even complained about Emma's bicycle being parked in our own driveway, claiming it was aesthetically disruptive to the neighborhood's visual harmony. It became clear that Margaret's hatred wasn't really about rules or regulations. She hated military families, and she especially seemed to hate Emma for reasons I couldn't understand. An hour after Margaret's threatening visit, Emma came running to me with excitement shining in her bright eyes. Mommy, can I please go on the desert trail? I want to find pretty rocks for Daddy's collection. He loves getting treasures from all the places we live. The desert trail was a safe, well-marked path that ran behind our community and connected to a state park. Families used it every day for walks and nature exploration. Emma had been on it with me several times since we moved in, and she knew all the safety rules about staying on the marked path and not wandering off into the dangerous areas. Okay baby, but you need to be very careful and be back in exactly 1 hour, I said, preparing her small backpack with a full water bottle, some crackers and her emergency whistle. Stay on the marked path at all times, don't talk to strangers, and if you see anything scary, blow your whistle as loud as you can. I promise, Mommy, Emma said enthusiastically, giving me a big hug before skipping toward the trail entrance with the boundless energy that only children possess. I watched her go with a smile, then went inside because I had an extremely important work call scheduled with my commanding officer. The call was about supply logistics. for deployed units overseas including Jake's unit, and I absolutely couldn't miss it or reschedule it. Emma skipped onto the familiar trail, singing happily about finding treasures for Daddy and carefully counting the different types of cacti and desert flowers she encountered. She loved nature and was always collecting interesting rocks, unusual leaves and pretty flowers to show us when she returned from her adventures. What I didn't know was that Margaret had been watching our house like a predator stalking its prey, waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. She had been planning something terrible ever since our confrontation that morning. Margaret had decided that if she couldn't force us to control Emma through normal HOA channels, she would take matters into her own hands in the most evil way imaginable. Margaret followed Emma from a distance, staying far enough back that my daughter couldn't see her but close enough to track her movements. She drove her expensive luxury SUV right onto the trail, which was completely against all posted safety rules and community regulations that she claimed to care so much about. When Emma was about a mile from home, far enough that no one else was around to witness what was about to happen, Margaret made her move. "Emma?" Margaret called out sweetly, completely transforming her voice from the angry, hateful tone she had used with me earlier. "Your mommy sent me to come get you." Emma stopped walking and turned around, her face showing confusion but not fear. She had been taught to respect adults and always tried to be helpful when grown-ups needed something. "She did?" Emma asked innocently, tilting her head in the curious way that children do when they're trying to understand something. "Yes, sweetheart," Margaret lied with practiced fake kindness that would have fooled any trusting child. "Your mommy got very busy with her important work call, and she suddenly realized it wasn't safe for you to be out here all alone. She asked me specifically to come find you and bring you somewhere safe until she's finished with her meeting." Emma trusted adults implicitly, like all good children who have been raised with love and safety. She didn't know that some grown-ups could be evil and lie to hurt innocent children. Without any suspicion, she climbed into Margaret's air-conditioned SUV, chattering excitedly about the interesting rocks and pretty flowers she had already discovered. "I found a red one that's really smooth, and a sparkly one that looks like it has diamonds in it," Emma said happily, showing Margaret her small collection of treasures. "Daddy loves getting rocks from all the places we live because he says they help him remember home when he's far away." Margaret pretended to listen and act interested, making appropriate sounds of approval, but inside she was planning something truly monstrous. Instead of taking Emma back home like she had promised, she drove in the completely opposite direction, heading deeper and deeper into the dangerous, unforgiving desert. The Arizona desert is one of the most dangerous environments on Earth, especially during summer months. The sun was blazing at over 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and there were no trees, buildings, or shade anywhere for miles. Deadly rattlesnakes and scorpions lived among the rocks and cacti. Even experienced adults could die from dehydration and heat stroke in just a few hours without proper water and shelter. A 5-year-old child would have almost no chance of survival. Margaret drove for 20 long minutes, taking Emma miles and miles away from any road, any trail marker, any possible source of help or rescue. She finally stopped in the middle of absolutely nowhere, surrounded by nothing but endless sand, jagged rocks, and the kind of deadly heat that shimmers off the ground like invisible fire. "Get out of the car right now," Margaret suddenly ordered, her fake sweetness completely disappearing to reveal the monster she really was. "But this isn't my house," Emma said, looking around in growing confusion and the first stirrings of real fear. "Where are we? Why did we stop here? This doesn't look like anywhere I've been before." "Your mother doesn't want you anymore," Margaret lied with pure evil in her voice, clearly enjoying every moment of the psychological torture she was inflicting on an innocent child. "She told me that military children are too much trouble to take care of. She's tired of dealing with you and your constant noise and mess. She specifically asked me to bring you out here and leave you where someone else might find you and take you away." Emma's small world shattered as she started crying, her little heart breaking under the weight of these terrible lies. "That's not true. Mommy loves me. She tells me every day. She would never ever leave me." "We'll see about that," Margaret said with cold cruelty, getting back into her SUV and preparing to commit what amounted to attempted murder. "Maybe now your mother will learn what happens when military families refuse to follow the rules and show proper respect." She drove away at high speed, leaving my precious baby completely alone to die in the burning, merciless desert. The dust cloud from Margaret's speeding vehicle settled quickly, and Emma was left in complete, terrifying silence, surrounded by dangers she couldn't even begin to imagine or understand. Meanwhile, I was finishing my important conference call with headquarters, completely unaware that my daughter was fighting for her life just miles away. When I hung up the phone, I immediately went outside to wait for Emma to return from her nature adventure, expecting to see her skipping up the trail any minute with her backpack full of treasures. But the trail entrance was empty, and she was nowhere to be seen. I called her name loudly, thinking maybe she had found something really interesting and had lost track of time, which sometimes happened when she got excited about her discoveries. When 15 minutes passed with no answer and no sign of her, real worry started to creep into my mind. Emma was always very good about coming home on time, especially when I gave her specific instructions. I decided to walk down the trail to look for her, thinking she might have gotten distracted or possibly hurt herself on a rock. I jogged along the familiar path, following her small footprints in the sandy trail surface. About a mile from our house, I found something that made my blood turn to ice water in my veins. Emma's water bottle was lying abandoned in the sand, partially buried. Her small backpack was scattered nearby, with her crackers and emergency whistle spilled everywhere as if there had been some kind of struggle or sudden departure. Most alarming of all, there were fresh tire tracks in the soft dirt that definitely didn't belong to any authorized hiking or maintenance vehicle. My military training kicked in immediately, and I understood the horrible truth with crystal clarity. Someone had taken my daughter. This wasn't an accident or a case of Emma wandering off the trail. This was an abduction. My hands were shaking as I immediately called 911, but I also dialed the one number I knew would bring immediate and overwhelming help, the direct emergency line to Colonel Martinez, my commanding officer at the nearby military base. "Sir, this is Captain Mitchell," I said, forcing my voice to remain professional and clear even though my heart was being torn apart with fear. "My 5-year-old daughter has been kidnapped from the community desert trail. I need immediate search and rescue assistance." "Mitchell, repeat that information." Colonel Martinez's voice became sharp and completely focused. "Did you say your daughter was kidnapped?" "Yes, sir. My daughter Emma has been abducted from the marked trail system. I have physical evidence including abandoned personal belongings and vehicle tracks. I need every available resource for search and rescue operations right now." "Consider it done, Captain," the colonel said with the kind of authority that moves mountains. "We protect our own and we protect our families. Help is already being deployed." True to his word, within exactly 3 minutes, the sky filled with the thunderous, magnificent sound of military helicopters approaching at maximum speed. Colonel Martinez hadn't just authorized a simple search team or called in a favor. He had launched a full-scale military operation to find a soldier's missing child, using every piece of advanced equipment and every trained professional available. 3 Apache attack helicopters and 2 massive transport helicopters roared across the desert like avenging angels sent from heaven. Multiple military ground vehicles raced across the sandy terrain from different directions, kicking up huge dust clouds as they converged on the search area. Highly trained search and rescue teams deployed with the lightning speed and flawless efficiency that makes our armed forces legendary around the world. The helicopter pilots located Emma within just minutes using state-of-the-art thermal imaging cameras that could detect body heat signatures from incredible distances. She was severely dehydrated, badly sunburned, and crying uncontrollably, but she was alive and conscious, which was nothing short of a miracle. But the advanced surveillance equipment also detected something else that made every soldier's blood boil with righteous fury: Margaret's luxury SUV racing away from the general area at dangerously high speeds, clearly trying to escape the scene before anyone could connect her to this heinous crime. The Apache helicopters intercepted Margaret's fleeing vehicle like something straight out of an action movie. She suddenly found herself completely surrounded by military aircraft, with absolutely nowhere to run and no possible way to hide from the justice that was about to rain down on her. When the rescue team finally reached Emma, she was huddled in the small shadow of a large rock, the only shade available in the entire area. She had been smart enough and brave enough to conserve her energy and seek what little protection she could find, but she was clearly traumatized, terrified, and suffering from the beginning stages of heat exhaustion. Sergeant Rodriguez, the team leader and a father of 3 himself, approached her with infinite gentleness and patience. "Hey there, little soldier," he said softly, kneeling down to her eye level and speaking in the kind of calm, reassuring voice that helps children feel safe. "Your mommy sent us to bring you home where you belong." "Really?" Emma whispered, her voice hoarse from crying and dehydration, her lips already starting to crack from the brutal heat. "The mean lady told me that mommy didn't want me anymore. She said mommy was tired of taking care of me." "That lady was telling you lies, sweetheart," Sergeant Rodriguez said gently but firmly. "Your mommy loves you more than anything else in the whole world and she's waiting for you right now. She's worried sick about you and she can't wait to hold you in her arms again." Meanwhile, several miles away, Margaret was being detained by heavily armed military police who had absolutely zero tolerance for anyone evil enough to harm an innocent child. She was screaming and ranting about her rights and her important position in the community, but her earlier arrogance had completely evaporated, replaced by growing terror as she began to realize the true magnitude of what she had done. "This is all a terrible mistake," she shrieked at the soldiers who were placing her in handcuffs. "I'm a respected member of this community. I'm the HOA president. You can't treat me like some common criminal." "Ma'am, you kidnapped a 5-year-old child and abandoned her to die in the desert," the commanding officer replied with ice-cold professionalism that made it clear he had dealt with the worst kinds of human beings during his military career. "You're under arrest for kidnapping, child endangerment, attempted murder, and federal crimes against a military family." When the helicopters finally landed at our community's emergency landing zone, bringing Emma safely home, the entire neighborhood came out to witness the incredible scene. Military personnel in full combat gear, massive aircraft that dominated the sky, and serious-faced soldiers made it absolutely clear to everyone watching that this wasn't just a local incident or neighborhood dispute. This was a federal crime committed against a military family, and the full power of the United States Armed Forces had been mobilized to ensure justice. Emma ran into my waiting arms the very second she saw me, crying and holding me tighter than she had ever held anything in her young life. "Mommy? The mean lady told me you didn't want me anymore, but I knew in my heart she was lying. I will always want you, my precious baby girl," I sobbed, holding her like I would never let her go again, feeling her small body shaking against mine. "Always and forever, no matter what anyone ever tells you." The extensive investigation that followed revealed the complete scope of Margaret's calculated cruelty and premeditated evil. Security cameras from the trail entrance clearly showed her intercepting Emma and convincing her to get into the vehicle. GPS tracking data from her luxury SUV provided undeniable proof that she had driven Emma deep into the desert with the specific intention of abandoning her there. Margaret was charged with multiple federal crimes including kidnapping across state lines, since the military base was technically federal property, child endangerment, attempted murder, and hate crimes against a military family. The FBI took over the case immediately, and Margaret quickly discovered that kidnapping a military dependent carried far more serious legal consequences than she had ever imagined in her worst nightmares. Her team of expensive lawyers couldn't save her from the overwhelming evidence or from the righteous fury of an entire military community that protects its own families with fierce dedication. The story went viral when military families across the country shared it on social media, showing the world exactly what happens when someone targets a soldier's child. Margaret's trial became a major national news story that captured the attention of millions of people. Military families, veterans organizations, and child advocacy groups from every state rallied around our family to show their support. The courtroom was packed every single day with uniformed service members demonstrating their solidarity and demanding justice for Emma. During the sentencing hearing, the federal judge's words were particularly powerful and memorable. "Mrs. Thornfield, you didn't just endanger one innocent child. You attacked the family of someone who serves our country with honor, someone who risks her life every day to protect the freedoms that you enjoy and take for granted. Your actions were not just criminal, they were an assault on our military families who sacrifice so much for our nation's security." Margaret was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 15 years. Her mansion and all her assets were seized to pay for Emma's extensive therapy, medical expenses, and the trauma counseling she would need for years to come. The HOA immediately expelled her from the community and passed comprehensive new regulations specifically designed to protect military families from any form of discrimination or harassment. But the most beautiful and heartwarming part of this entire story came several weeks later when Emma's daddy was able to return home. Jake's commanding officer had expedited his return from deployment after learning about the kidnapping incident. The entire military base organized a special welcome home ceremony specifically for our family, complete with a full honor guard and hundreds of service members showing their support. Emma wore a tiny military uniform that the base seamstress had lovingly created especially for her, complete with honorary patches, ribbons, and a small American flag pin. She looked absolutely adorable and so proud to be wearing something that connected her to her daddy's service. "Daddy," she squealed with pure joy, running across the tarmac toward him as hundreds of service members cheered and applauded for our brave little girl. Jake swept her up in his strong arms, tears of relief and happiness streaming down his weathered face as he held the daughter he had almost lost forever. "I'm home, my precious baby girl. Daddy's home and I promise I'm never leaving you again." The entire military community had essentially adopted Emma as their honorary mascot and little sister. They called her Little Soldier, and made absolutely sure she understood that she was part of a family that stretched far beyond just her parents, a family that would always protect her and love her unconditionally. Service members would regularly stop by our house to check on Emma's recovery, bringing small gifts, sharing stories from around the world, and helping her understand that she was part of something much bigger and more important than just our small family. Emma recovered from her traumatic experience with the help of specialized military family counselors who understood the unique challenges faced by children in military families. She began drawing pictures of helicopters and brave soldiers, telling everyone she met with enormous pride that, "My daddy's friends saved me in the desert when the mean lady tried to hurt me." 6 months later, when Margaret's final appeals were denied and she began serving her full sentence with no hope of early release, Emma asked me a question that showed how much she had grown and matured through this terrible experience. "Mommy, why was the mean lady so angry at us? What did we do to make her hate us so much?" "Some people have hearts that are broken and filled with darkness," I explained carefully, choosing my words to help her understand without destroying her faith in humanity. When people are very unhappy inside, sometimes they try to hurt others to make themselves feel better. But that doesn't make it okay, and that's why good people work together to make sure bad actions always have serious consequences. "I hope her heart gets fixed while she's in jail," Emma said with the innocent wisdom that only children possess. "Maybe if someone teaches her how to be nice, she won't want to hurt other kids when she gets out." Today, Emma is 7 years old and absolutely thriving in ways that make my heart burst with pride every single day. She's become a confident, articulate advocate for military children, often speaking at base events and community gatherings about the importance of family support and community solidarity. The shy, traumatized little girl who was abandoned in the desert has grown into a strong, compassionate child who understands that she's part of something much bigger and more important than herself. Margaret's evil actions, which were specifically intended to destroy our military family and break our spirits, instead united an entire community and showed the world the incredible power of military solidarity and brotherhood. When you attack one service member's family, you face the full might, fury, and unwavering determination of the United States military and the unbreakable bonds that protect our own. Our neighborhood is now officially designated as a military-friendly community, with comprehensive special protections for service families and their children. Emma's story is told to every new resident as a powerful example of the community values we uphold and the consequences of violating them. And every single time Emma sees a helicopter flying overhead, she waves enthusiastically and smiles with pure joy, remembering the day that Daddy's friends came swooping down from the sky to rescue her from the desert and bring her safely home where she belongs. Margaret learned far too late that military families are never truly alone, no matter where in the world we might be stationed. We're part of an unbreakable brotherhood and sisterhood that spans the entire globe, united by service, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to protect each other's children as fiercely and completely as we protect our own. The desert that was meant to be Emma's final resting place became instead the place where military justice prevailed completely, and where one brave little girl learned that she's protected by the strongest, most dedicated family on earth, the United States military and all who serve proudly under its flag.